Thank you for following this storyline. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this content so you won't miss updates on other exciting comic storylines. On the way back to the vehicle, Chun admitted that he had never considered leaving his room before. He had been preoccupied with his personal life. As a reward for his hard work, Zhang Yi gave him a backpack full of food for the day. Chun was overjoyed and promised to always follow Zhang Yi. During their return, they grew closer. Zhang Yi curiously asked how Chun discovered his powers. Embarrassed, Chun explained that after his parents passed away, he had been deeply sad, losing himself in imagination and personal indulgence. One day, after indulging himself more than 26 times, he felt like he was going to die. However, the next day, he woke up with newfound strength. Zhang Yi was stunned, never expecting someone to recover from near-death experiences so frequently. In the end, Zhang Yi decided that Chun should return to his village alone, as his vehicle couldn't safely cross the frozen lake. Before leaving, Zhang Yi reminded Chun to be cautious of the many dangers in the post-apocalyptic world, including threats from those around them. When Chun arrived back at his village, he was criticized by the new village leader for negotiating with Zhang Yi on his own. Despite Chun's claims that the negotiation led to cooperation rather than retaliation, the leader was furious. He blamed Chun for the many casualties and accused him of trying to gain personal benefit by aligning with the enemy to protect the village. Chun tried to explain that he had promised his grandfather to protect the village, which was why he sought to prevent Zhang Yi from attacking. However, the new leader asserted his authority, making it clear that all decisions must now go through him. Chun could no longer act independently. The leader announced that he would take measures to ensure the village's safety, including reaching out to Zhang Yi himself. He broadcasted a message to the villagers, declaring that they were no longer in danger. Many praised his leadership, saying he should have been the leader from the start. As he basked in their compliments, he belittled Chun, accusing him of never being taken seriously by women. After Zhang Yi returned home, he shared the day's events with the two women living with him. Yang Mi praised his strategy, while Yokier thought Yang Mi still underestimated Zhang Yi's capabilities. She reminded Yang Mi that Zhang Yi could defeat anyone. Zhang Yi believed that maintaining relationships with people like Chun could be useful in the future if new enemies emerged. With the issue settled, Yokier suggested celebrating. She went to get drinks, while Yang Mi prepared food. Before long, both Yokier and Yang Mi fell asleep from drinking, but Zhang Yi, who wasn't used to drinking much, remained alert. As the two women slept, Zhang Yi felt a sense of satisfaction but also an unease he couldn't shake off. The next day, Chun contacted Zhang Yi, proposing the idea of forming a 5-person team dressed in different colors like the Power Rangers. Embarrassed, Zhang Yi began questioning his decision to ally with someone as eccentric as Chun. Chun's constant messages overwhelmed Zhang Yi, leading him to start ignoring them and only giving short responses. Meanwhile, in the garden, Yang Mi focused on her work while Zhang Yi worried about the possibility of their system being hacked again, a lingering issue that constantly troubled him. Inside, Yang Mi and Yokier were discussing Shinsin, a girl confined to a wheelchair. Yang Mi wanted to help her, but Yokier doubted Zhang Yi would take a risk that brought no benefit to him. To persuade Zhang Yi, Yang Mi considered using her charm, which Yokier mocked, believing it was just an excuse to seduce him. The two women began to bicker, suspicion growing between them. Just then, Zhang Yi entered and asked about the commotion. Although they tried to brush it off as a family matter, Zhang Yi sat between them, stating that there should be no more secrets among the three of them. He asked if they were worried about their families. Yokier revealed that she had lost contact with her family since the snowstorm and had no idea if they were still alive. Meanwhile, Yang Mi shared that her family had managed to reach out to her, but they were in danger and needed help. They were trying to figure out a way to convince Zhang Yi to help people who had no direct connection to them. Despite initial hesitation, both Yang Mi and Yokier pleaded with Zhang Yi, insisting that these people were the only family they had left. Yokier further promised to fulfill any of Zhang Yi's requests if he agreed, including anything involving both her and Yang Mi. Zhang Yi asked if they were truly willing to go that far, and though embarrassed, both women nodded. Yang Mi expressed how heartbreaking it was to see Shinsin trapped in her wheelchair, unable to move freely in the snow. Zhang Yi realized that if Shinsin was that important to them, perhaps she was valuable to him as well. Yokier was impressed by Zhang Yi's decision, calling him a kind-hearted person despite his cold demeanor. Yang Mi, feeling grateful, drew closer to Zhang Yi and promised to repay his kindness. The next day, after tensions had cooled, the three of them resumed their discussion. Zhang Yi asked about the girl trapped in the wheelchair, Shin. Yokier explained that Shin was at Tianning Academy, the best university in the city, known for being home to many geniuses. Zhang Yi wondered how someone confined to a wheelchair could survive there for months. Zhang Yi explained that the campus had its own market system, ensuring enough supplies for the students staying there. Zhang Yi then questioned why Yang Mi had just now tried to contact him about this. Yang Mi revealed that she had tried to reach Shin multiple times, but the number was unreachable. Yokier joked that maybe Shin had changed her mind and no longer wanted help. When Zhang Yi asked about the distance to the academy, they found out it was over 22 kilometers away. Considering the snowstorm, it was likely that the phone lines were down. Zhang Yi suggested trying to connect via the internet. They went to the control room and attempted to call using the best phone available. The call connected, but the signal was poor. They heard static and terrified screams mentioning something dangerous, followed by shouts about a monster. Zhang Yi heard a chilling, monstrous roar before the call abruptly disconnected. Initially, Zhang Yi thought the rescue mission would be simple, just go there and return, but after hearing those sounds, he realized something far more dangerous awaited them. Doubts crept into his mind about going to such a perilous place, yet his wives insisted that he should not back out. Zhang Yi decided to proceed, understanding he needed the help of his subordinates and their combined strength. With assistance from Pamanu, Chun-Lei, and his own weapons, they might be able to minimize the danger. He contacted Chun-Lei, who accepted the mission out of boredom while snacking. Zhang Yi pondered whether eating too much could affect his agility, but he also needed enough energy to fuel his powers. Zhang Yi told his wives that for their safety, they would stay on the lower floor of the house. Yang Mi questioned this, but Yokier, knowing her husband's cautious nature, didn't question his decision. She trusted that if anyone attempted to invade their home, the doors would remain impenetrable. His wives supported his plan, while Yang Mi expressed hope that they could bring her sister home. Before departing, Zhang Yi ensured his wives' safety, reminding himself not to be reckless, especially when it came to those closest to him. Chun-Lei arrived early at the meeting point, worried about disappointing Zhang Yi. They quickly got into the vehicle due to the cold weather. Zhang Yi explained their mission to rescue the girl stranded at the distant academy. Chun-Lei asked if the girl was important to Zhang Yi, who replied that her computer skills were essential for protecting his home from hacker attacks. Along the way, they met Uncle Yu, the third member of the team, arriving in a snow vehicle. Uncle Yu appeared healthy and active, often exercising with his wife. Zhang Yi introduced Uncle Yu and Chun-Lei, explaining their abilities, Uncle Yu, with his strength and regenerative abilities, and Chun-Lei, who could control snow. Despite coming from different worlds, they were united for this rescue mission. Uncle Yu, curious, asked about the mission. Zhang Yi described it as a simple task to save a girl, with the main challenge being the potential presence of dangerous monsters at their destination. Uncle Yu was startled and asked about the monsters. Zhang Yi explained that they could be animals mutated into monsters or humans transformed into terrifying creatures. With that, they set off toward their destination. At Tianning Academy, the students had gathered in the gymnasium. Tensions rose among them. Some angrily questioned how someone bound to a wheelchair like Ecchi could survive so long when many had already died. They accused her of being a burden, dragging others toward death, and criticized the need to protect someone immobile. Some students focused solely on their own survival, while others mourned friends they'd lost. A student noted that Ecchi showed no remorse for the deaths around her and questioned why she was still alive. They argued that teacher Lien should no longer protect her since she was just a burden. Some even suggested sacrificing her if the monsters attacked again. However, a few asserted that they had protected Ecchi enough. The argument paused when a student declared that it wasn't their decision to make, as teacher Lien would never abandon anyone, he had been their protector all this time. At that moment, a student approached Ecchi, who was sitting alone. Coldly, the girl told Ecchi that if teacher Lien refused to let her leave, she should go to hell without dragging everyone else down. Ecchi silently cried, unable to respond, while other students shouted their agreement from a distance. Only Ecchi's best friend stood up for her, insisting that she was the one who had always helped Ecchi without anyone else's support. Yet, a wealthy girl retorted that Ecchi's friend had no right to speak, being a poor scholarship student. The friend argued that everyone had equal rights, but the rich girl dismissed her, asserting that they would never be equals. In her view, Ecchi only had value because of her wealthy, influential family, even though she was wheelchair-bound. She suggested that Ecchi had lost her status because she was a burden. Ecchi's friend continued to defend her, but the others accused her of seeking rewards for supporting Ecchi. After hearing all these insults, Ecchi wept quietly. Amid the heated debate, a girl from the crowd approached Ecchi, seemingly extending a hand of friendship, though her intentions were likely self-serving. Suddenly, the argument was interrupted as a window shattered, and a massive claw burst through, grabbing a student and pulling them outside. The creature, a giant cat, began licking its captured prey, leaving the gymnasium in stunned silence. Everyone inside the gym screamed in panic at the horrifying sight, running away as quickly as possible. Shin and her friend were left behind, with Shin still trapped in her wheelchair. They tried to reach the door, but it was locked. The giant cat shattered the window and leaped inside, still clutching its prey, whose body was now halfway into its mouth. It spat out the mangled body, leaving only the head uneaten, while discarding the rest carelessly. The cat then pounced in front of the other students, as if intimidating them. One of the students pushed Shin forward, causing her to fall helplessly in front of the giant cat. Her friend, terrified, thought about saving her, but Shin was right in the creature's path, on the verge of becoming its next victim. One student, seeing the cat's focus diverted, tried to escape through the gym's exit, but the cat quickly turned back, attacking them. The student stumbled and fell, and the cat shifted its focus to others who were still moving. Shin's friend tried to help, while the other students realized the cat was more interested in moving targets. Since Shin had fallen and wasn't moving, the cat ignored her. The same student who initially tried to escape screamed again, drawing the cat's attention. Amid the chaos, everyone ran for the exit. Some glanced back, seeing the first injured student lying on the ground, pleading for help, but all they could do was keep running. They understood that for some to survive, others had to be sacrificed. As the students fled, the injured one lay motionless, muttering that if their survival depended on them, everyone would die alongside them. Meanwhile, the giant cat continued to toy with its prey, batting them with its massive paws. Its tail lashed out, striking down several more students. The atmosphere became increasingly grim as desperate screams for help echoed throughout the gym. Fortunately, their teacher, Lien, finally returned. Her presence was enough to draw the attention of the mutant cat. The beast sensed the threat from the sword she wielded. When Lien attempted to strike, the cat dodged, seemingly realizing that this teacher was far more dangerous than the students. The cat eventually grabbed a fallen prey and retreated. Lien, standing guard at the exit, confirmed that the monster had truly left, its massive paw prints etched deeply into the snow. It seemed the creature couldn't defeat teacher Lien, hinting at her unusual strength. Had Lien remained in the gym, they wouldn't have been at risk, but she had to leave to find food, an opportunity the mutant cat exploited for its attack. Among the victims and the wounded, a student who had previously argued with Shin complained again, questioning why the wheelchair-bound girl always survived every attack. How was it possible that she remained unharmed? Another student tried to calm them down, reminding them that teacher Lien had brought food and the cat had already left. Exhausted from both the debate and the responsibility of scavenging for supplies, Lien didn't interfere. She simply stated that as long as they didn't kill each other, she wouldn't intervene, let them argue as much as they wanted. A distressed student cried out, declaring that the world had ended and there was no hope left, that they were all doomed to die. However, another student tried to reassure them, claiming that their father was the leader of a major corporation and would surely come to rescue them. Meanwhile, Zhang Yi and his team finally arrived near the rescue site, but everything was buried under thick snow. They struggled to find the exact location of the academy, as it was almost completely covered. Their attempts to contact the girl they were searching for failed, as there was no signal. Considering splitting up for a quicker search, Zhang Yi ultimately decided that it was too risky with monsters lurking around. Staying together was the only way to ensure everyone's safety. After continuing their journey, they found a building not covered in snow. According to the GPS, it was the campus astronomy center, while the dormitories and cafeteria were to the north. However, to enter the building, they had to face the risk of a collapse from the dangerous ice structure. Before Zhang Yi could stop him, Chunlei had already tried to enter, but his large body couldn't fit through. Suddenly, Zhang Yi saw something approaching. As he pointed his weapon, he realized it was a giant cat. Despite having a gun aimed at it, the monster didn't immediately attack, leading Zhang Yi to think the creature might possess some intelligence. When Pamanu and Chunlei returned, they immediately attacked the creature. In response, the giant cat became more aggressive. With no other choice, Zhang Yi joined the fight, using his enhanced physical abilities. He jumped over the creature and shot it in the head. Despite the shot, the cat kept advancing. Pamanu, standing protectively before Chunlei, used his strength to deliver a powerful punch to the cat's head. The hit was so strong that it cracked the ice beneath them, causing the creature to retreat. Observing the situation, Zhang Yi was stunned by the creature's resilience. He then used a stronger precision rifle and shot the cat's face, wounding it. Enraged, the cat curled into a ball and rolled toward them. In panic, Zhang Yi considered trapping the creature in his dimensional storage space. The plan nearly succeeded, but the cat, sensing danger, changed direction and fled toward the snowy mountains. It let out a loud growl before disappearing, then reappeared in the distance, growling angrily. The creature seemed to mock them as it vanished. Pamanu and Chunlei were puzzled, feeling as if the cat had cursed them with its behavior. They wondered how a cat could be that massive and dig such precise tunnels. Chunlei worried that if the cat hunted like this, no one at the school would survive. Zhang Yi recalled that when the creature first approached, it didn't seem aggressive. It only became hostile after being attacked by Chunlei and Pamanu. He concluded that the cat had mutated, grown larger, and developed high intelligence, aware of its actions. They examined the tunnel dug by the creature and decided to follow it, believing it could lead to where the cat more easily hunted. At the bottom of the tunnel, there were branches and other tunnels whose directions were unknown. Fearing they might get lost, Zhang Yi marked their path with tools from his dimensional storage. They smelled blood and chose to follow the scent. Zhang Yi, on guard, took out a powerful weapon from his storage. Pamanu, a former veteran, appreciated the weapon and took the lead with his experience as a group leader. Meanwhile, inside the gymnasium, their teacher remained on guard despite being exhausted from days without sleep. He continued searching for food for the students, whose supplies were running out. The students complained, urging the teacher to find food quickly. The teacher hesitated, considering whether to go out now, risking an encounter with the creature, or wait and face an even greater danger. One student suggested that the teacher leave quickly and return with food. Teacher Lien, barely maintaining his patience, managed to control himself. He decided to go out again to search for food. After that, they closed the door and remained isolated inside the gymnasium. Outside, Teacher Lien thought that if he encountered the cat, he would fight to the death alongside the students. Meanwhile, inside the gym, Karen asked Shinshin if she was okay. Shinshin replied that she was fine thanks to her friend's help. However, the wealthy and arrogant student once again criticized Shinshin, saying she continued to be a burden to her friend and never felt tired of being useless. Karen defended Shinshin, reminding them that the student had pushed Shinshin when the cat attacked and should apologize. Before the argument could escalate, the giant cat reappeared at the gym window. Its massive claw reached inside and grabbed a student. The student who had previously claimed to be able to save everyone ran away, pushing a classmate back into the gym. In the next attack, the cat crushed another student's body, while the desperate students tried to escape. Teacher Lien returned to the gym and now had the opportunity to fight the cat. He chose to attack the cat's head. Despite being wounded, they engaged in a fierce battle before the terrified students. Amid the chaos, Zhang Yi and his team arrived through the tunnel and witnessed the scene. Realizing their presence, Teacher Lien felt a glimmer of hope and asked for help to fight the monster. Chunlei was ready to attack, but Zhang Yi stopped him, reasoning that the woman wielding a sword seemed highly skilled. She could hold her ground against the cat, indicating she might also be a mutant with special abilities. Unsure whether she was an ally or enemy, they chose not to interfere and searched for another way to the gym. They left the tunnel, managed to enter through a gym door, and headed toward the students. Zhang Yi immediately recognized Shinshin from her wheelchair and red hair. He felt fortunate she was still alive. However, before he could approach her, a boy blocked his path and asked if he was from the Western Mountain Base and a friend of his father. Zhang Yi seriously asked about the place. The boy introduced himself as Xingyu, the class vice president from a noble family, hoping Zhang Yi would recognize him. Zhang Yi just nodded and wanted to know more about the base in the Western Mountains. The clever boy questioned why they were asking about the Western base if they were from another base since that one was closer. This made Zhang Yi think that there might be another base around this area. He asked the boy for information about any other shelters besides the one in the Western Mountains, but the boy only knew a little, that his father had mentioned a few safe places. Ignoring the boy, Zhang Yi approached Shinshin. Other students, shocked, tried to talk to Pamanu and Chunlei, curious about what Zhang Yi was discussing. Finally reaching Shinshin, Zhang Yi confirmed if she was alright. He introduced himself as Zhang Yi, saying he knew her older brother well and that her brother had asked him to come and rescue her. He then asked if Shinshin was willing to leave with him. Without much thought, Shinshin agreed. Zhang Yi prepared to push her wheelchair to take her away, but before leaving, Shinshin requested that Zhang Yi stop the fight between Teacher Lien and the cat. Seeing an opportunity to make Shinshin owe him a favor, Zhang Yi called Chun and Pamanu to carry out the task. As they headed toward the battleground, Zhang Yi noticed the scattered cat claws and decided to store them in his dimensional space. Upon arriving, Chun used his strength to collapse the ceiling, separating Teacher Lien and the cat from the fight. Although they succeeded, Teacher Lien was furious because she didn't want the battle to stop, she just wanted help to defeat the creature. Zhang Yi sarcastically remarked that Teacher Lien should be thankful. However, Teacher Lien, enraged, showed her sword and said this was the first time she had managed to corner the beast, and they had ruined it. She doubted she'd ever get such a chance again. Zhang Yi explained that he only wanted to help, not kill the creature, and that he acted because one of her students had asked him to. Teacher Lien, still angry, cursed and attacked him. Trusting his instincts, Zhang Yi leaped back and shot her in the forehead with a desert eagle, but to his surprise, Teacher Lien deflected it with her sword. As Teacher Lien prepared to strike again, Zhang Yi used his dimensional power and trapped her inside his dimensional space. After a few tense seconds, Zhang Yi released her, mocking her for attacking someone who had just helped. He warned everyone not to approach her recklessly, describing her as both dangerous and reckless. Zhang Yi then took her sword, deciding to keep it temporarily since a blade capable of cutting bullets was valuable. When Teacher Lien demanded her sword back, Zhang Yi refused. He asked a student to help the exhausted teacher rest, noting how fatigued she seemed after days without proper sleep. After that, Zhang Yi explained to everyone that he had only come to take Shinshin away. The teacher questioned why he wouldn't take the other students as well. Students around Zhang Yi began offering money, claiming they were all from wealthy families and willing to pay anything if he could escort them to safety. Zhang Yi reiterated that he couldn't take responsibility for important people like them. If their families were wealthy, they would surely send someone to rescue them. A student angry at Shin Xian took drastic action by holding Shin Xian hostage along with several other students. They threatened to kill Shin Xian if they were not included. The teacher, witnessing this, felt terrified and tried to remind them of the dangers outside, but the students remained adamant. Zhang Yi, having had enough, shot all of Shin Xian's captors dead. Teacher Lien was shocked by his actions, unable to believe Zhang Yi could be so ruthless. Zhang Yi asserted that anyone who dared to take hostages should be prepared to face the consequences. What surprised him was Shin Xian's calm demeanor, showing no fear at all. After confirming Shin Xian was safe, Zhang Yi asked if they could leave. Shin Xian agreed but requested to bring Karen, her best friend. Zhang Yi hesitated to take on another person, but Shin Xian explained that Karen was highly intelligent and resourceful. Karen was a scholarship student at the academy, an expert in mechanics and engineering capable of building and repairing various things. After considering Karen's skills, Zhang Yi agreed to bring her. During their departure, some other students claimed to have abilities like driving or managing money to join the group. A student blamed Zhang Yi for Teacher Lien's lost opportunity to face the creature and warned of the danger if the monster returned. Zhang Yi ignored them. Before leaving, Shin Xian thanked Teacher Lien, and Zhang Yi decided to take only her and Karen. Outside, Zhang Yi showcased his power by retrieving a car and snow vehicles from his dimensional storage. They left, leaving the confused students behind. At that moment, a wealthy student noticed his phone had a signal and tried to contact his father. Zhang Yi and the two girls continued their journey comfortably inside the car, enjoying the warmth after spending so much time outside. Zhang Yi brought out water and food from his storage to replenish their energy. Shin Xian and Karen felt grateful and praised Zhang Yi, but he redirected the praise to Shin Xian. Shin Xian felt puzzled by the compliment, believing she was just a burden and would not have survived without Karen's protection. Zhang Yi insisted that it wasn't true. He believed Shin Xian's survival in a wheelchair all this time wasn't just luck but also due to her intelligence and a secret she kept. Karen, confused, didn't understand what they were discussing. Zhang Yi acknowledged Shin Xian's sharpness in understanding situations, especially concerning the monster. Shin Xian admitted that she had once taken care of a stray cat named Blossom before the snow disaster. That cat, now a monster, didn't attack her and Karen because of the kindness shown before. Karen was shocked to learn that the monster was the same cat they had once fed. Zhang Yi grew curious whether the cat spared them out of gratitude or if there was another reason. Shin Xian explained that she had instructed the cat not to attack any outsiders who came to rescue her, but it continued to prey on the students it saw as food. Zhang Yi, sharing Shin Xian's view, only cared about the safety of Shin Xian and Karen. He believed that in this cruel world, only those of value could survive. During the journey, Zhang Yi asked why Shin Xian took so long to contact her sister. Shin Xian revealed that her intention in contacting her sister was to reach Zhang Yi. As a top student, she had been investigating the warehouse theft in the city even before the snow disaster. After the disaster, she suspected the stock supervisor as the main perpetrator, and recent information confirmed her theory. Using her sister's phone, she devised a plan to call Zhang Yi to save her. Shin Xian admitted that she knew all of Zhang Yi's actions before and after the disaster and had been monitoring his movements since the warehouse robbery news spread. If Zhang Yi hadn't come through her contact with Yang M, she had other ways to draw his attention, but she was thankful that Zhang Yi came willingly. This revelation left Zhang Yi surprised and more cautious of Shin Xian. Additionally, he began to suspect the presence of Blossom, the mutated cat that had been following their vehicle since they left. Zhang Yi considered taming the mutant cat, believing it could strengthen him further. Meanwhile, Shin Xian and Karen kept observing the cat from the car window. When they finally arrived at the shelter, they were greeted by Chun Lei and his uncle. Zhang Yi expressed his appreciation for their assistance before suggesting they return to their own homes. Zhang Yi then returned home, creating a warm atmosphere that made Shin Xian and Karen feel comfortable. Zhang Yi explained that as long as they were obedient and helpful, he would treat them well. Shinsen felt awkward and asked about other tasks, which surprised Zhang Yi. He emphasized that Shinsen should focus as a digital expert. Despite finding Shinsen adorable, he already had Yokier and Yangmi. Shinsen began to wonder if she was rejected because of her limitations. The conversation was interrupted when Yokier and Yangmi arrived. Yangmi seemed very worried about her sister. Shinsen reassured her, saying she was fine and only wanted to meet because she knew Yangmi was with Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi observed that the two sisters each had their own charm, beauty and intelligence that drew attention. Yangmi was curious about how Shinsen knew about their location and introduced Ken, her best friend and a mechanic expert at school, whom Zhang Yi found quite endearing. The head of the house instructed Yangmi to prepare dinner and rooms for the two girls. During dinner, they enjoyed a delicious meal, a luxury they hadn't had for months. Karen mentioned her need for proper materials and machines to create weapons and ammunition. Zhang Yi, feeling satisfied, took Karen to see some mechanical equipment he had stored. Karen listed the necessary machines and materials. Zhang Yi offered to help gather them, but Karen was confident she could organize it herself. As a test, Zhang Yi took out Teacher Lien's sword from his dimensional storage and handed it to Karen for evaluation. Karen was highly impressed with the sword's quality and felt honored to hold it. She explained that the sword was an invaluable ancient artifact that couldn't be replicated, sharp enough to cut diamonds. It had been given to Miss Lien as a reward for her services, and she valued it more than her own life. This information gave Zhang Yi a new idea. After that, they continued their meal and discussed Karen's potential contributions to the house. Once they finished, they watched the news. Reports revealed that the cold disaster had no end in sight, with most of the global population already gone. Anarchy was spreading, laws were no longer effective, and power determined survival. Armed groups and military organizations began seizing territories and resources. Shinsen felt a pang of jealousy watching Zhang Yi's closeness with the other girls, while Zhang Yi realized that armed groups and military organizations would become significant threats in the battle for resources. Shinsen agreed, saying that a large-scale war over territory and resources was inevitable, and their shelter could become a target. Zhang Yi brought her to the control room with full internet access. In a short time, Shinsen mastered the system and discovered outdated security gaps. She explained that although the system was once advanced, it could now be exploited by hackers. Several hacking attempts had already occurred in recent weeks, and in a month, the attackers could take over the system. Shinsen quickly sealed all the gaps and began counter-hacking the attackers' network without leaving a trace. Zhang Yi felt fortunate to have brought her along. However, the situation changed when Yokier informed them that a giant cat monster had arrived at their door. Zhang Yi asked Shinsen for a solution, suspecting that the cat wanted to protect her. He decided to tame the creature. Zhang Yi led Shinsen out of the security room, calmed the girls, and approached the window where the cat was waiting. The cat seemed calm but threatening when Zhang Yi got too close. Zhang Yi tried to bribe the cat with food from his dimensional storage, but it refused. Shinsen reminded him that stray cats are highly suspicious of strangers. Finally, Zhang Yi proposed a deal: if the cat promised not to attack the village and only ate non-human food, he would provide it with sustenance. The cat agreed, and Zhang Yi returned home with Shinsen. When they arrived, Yokier was shocked to see the giant cat had suddenly shrunk. The creature wasn't mutated but had the ability to enlarge and shrink at will. This explained how it managed to devour several students. It would shrink while eating. The cat's ability to disappear and remain undetected, even by Teacher Lien, was also linked to this power. Zhang Yi noticed that the cat was wounded from the previous battle, but it seemed indifferent. He planned to provide the cat with medicine to gain its trust. Karen felt like she was dreaming because just that morning, they had been starving and freezing, while tonight, they were in a warm place with enough food and sleeping comfortably. Shinsen felt safe by Zhang Yi's side, who was so clever and resourceful. They discussed ways to strengthen their weapons and defenses. Meanwhile, back at the campus, a wealthy student managed to contact his father, but most of the others couldn't reach their families, possibly because they didn't survive. At least the monster cat hadn't attacked again. The young man pleaded with his father to save everyone. After several hours of waiting, a sound came from outside. They went out and saw a sleigh pulled by wolves with a group of soldiers dressed in cold weather gear. The teachers recognized them as trained soldiers. The boy asked if they had come on his father's orders. One of the soldiers removed his helmet, revealing himself as the boy's father. The boy was shocked to see his father looking thin and exhausted. He hugged his father, asking why he had taken so long to save him. Before his father could explain, the soldiers asked about the school's supplies since they knew a large stock was stored there. The boy told them about the frozen market at the school and mentioned the giant monster lurking nearby. The soldiers didn't see it as a problem and prepared to take down the monster. However, the boy left the responsibility to his teacher, who agreed to lead them to the supplies. The soldiers headed to the stockroom, but the teacher warned them about the monster, reminding them that it had already killed several students. The soldiers remained confident, prepared to face any threat. Along the way, the teacher also reminded everyone that the base was over 10 kilometers away. The soldiers warned that anyone who complained would be punished as a deserter. The students were instructed to stay silent and keep up with the group. The teacher handed out chocolate to those who were exhausted, and they continued their journey until nightfall. Finally, they arrived at the base at the foot of the mountain and were ordered to go inside, descending a series of stairs. The base was large and advanced but empty. The teacher tried to calm the anxious students. Not long after, a group of soldiers in protective suits arrived and sprayed them with gas. A heavy-set woman introduced herself and explained that this was a disinfection procedure to prevent disease from spreading in the base. After a series of tests, including disinfection, blood tests, and stool tests, the students were given delicious white yogurt to eat. They enjoyed it for a while. Later, the woman who led the procedure asked about the boy with them. His father, looking fearful, confirmed that it was his son. The woman ordered her team to take the students to a designated area but told the boy to go somewhere else. The boy told his friends that he was different and important because of his father, who warned him not to break the rules. He was taken to the place specified by the woman. Upon arriving there, the large woman asked the boy to take a bath. He complied since it had been 3 months since he last bathed. After exiting the bathroom with only a towel, he was shocked to see the large woman standing in front of him. She grabbed his hand and threw him onto the bed. After some time, the students were taken to another area to put on work uniforms. They were placed in a section with large bicycles and giant gears that needed to be pedaled to generate energy. They were told that working all day was mandatory to receive food and a warm bed. This labor was crucial for providing energy to the entire base. If they did not work, they would not receive food. The students felt pressured and couldn't believe it. Those who were once considered important now had to work hard. They panicked and pleaded with their teacher to save them, but the leader of the place coldly told them they could cry while working. The teacher tried to calm them, reminding them to follow orders for the sake of protection and sustenance. In a room designated for the luckier students, one of them lay broken after completing his tasks. His father waited for him, asking if everything went well. The large woman in charge remarked that the boy was diligent like his father. She hoped the boy would continue to work hard for the prosperity of the base. The boy lay down, struggling to process what had just happened. His father checked on him, ensuring nothing was broken. The boy, now crying, asked why his father hadn't told him earlier about the harsh realities of survival. He also wanted to know about his father's work. His father explained that everything had changed since the snowstorm. Mutant humans with powers emerged, and the hierarchy shifted. Those with abilities became more significant, while those with lower political standings lost their place to survive. His father had to work hard, and now his son had to replace him and work diligently alongside the large woman who had just left. After a day of pedaling the massive bikes, the students returned to their dorms, their bodies sore. They asked Teacher Lien if they would have to work like that every day. The teacher responded that they must work and not complain because this was the way of life in the new world. However, they were not ordinary people, they were elites. The students wondered why someone as important as they were should also work and suffer. They hoped Teacher Lien could find a way for them to avoid this labor. The most influential boy among them arrived with a dejected expression. When they asked if he could change the situation, he replied that things here were not as he had imagined. All they could do now was follow orders since everyone had their assigned roles. The students held a meeting, and one of them explained that they could only rely on themselves. Teacher Lien realized that his position as a teacher now meant nothing, but as an experienced fighter and a strong mutant, he still had value. The boy explained that the base was managed by Qin Yuan, the most powerful person there. The base had 4 layers, the first for the leaders and their families living in comfort, the second for technicians and scientists, the third for mutants with abilities, and the fourth for laborers who generated energy and lived in misery. The frightened boy explained that he had no intention of rebelling. The overseers from the 3rd layer maintained strict security and would destroy anyone who resisted. One of the students angrily blamed the boy for the unfulfilled promises. The boy remarked that they would have been better off staying at the campus, dying from the giant cat or starvation. He then said that the only way to improve their situation was with Teacher Lien's help. The students pleaded with Teacher Lien to help change their fate. After witnessing the injustice, Teacher Lien felt exhausted and decided to rest to be ready to work again the next day. The next morning, everyone woke up and lined up for work. An overseer announced that it was the day to thank their saviors. Periodically, all personnel in the base gathered to pay homage to their protectors, those guarding against the ongoing chaos outside. The students were given thin porridge. Teacher Lien left while the students wondered if this was part of his plan to improve their situation. The secretary signaled the students to return to their place. Teacher Lien was respectfully greeted, and then they walked toward the office of the highest leader, who welcomed him warmly and invited him to sit. The leader explained his plans for the base while Teacher Lien listened attentively. The secretary then escorted Teacher Lien to his new residence on the second level, where he was promoted to a military officer due to his awakened power. Meanwhile, the most luxurious residence belonged to Zhang Yi. After much effort, he finally gained the cat's trust by offering the best food. The cat, which initially ignored him, began to approach and enter the house. It marked its territory by tearing up the expensive sofa, but Zhang Yi accepted it without complaint. Eeyore felt relieved that the cat was not a woman. After everything was settled, the cat slept on a plush chair. Zhang Yi attempted to pet it but was rejected. Zhang Yi managed to earn the cat's trust after persistent efforts, often bathing with it. Meanwhile, Yokier and the other girls began to approach him more frequently. Shin, with his hacking skills, discovered a conversation attempting to breach the house's security system. He easily tracked it without being noticed, realizing the conversation originated from the base where his teacher was stationed. They were planning to attack the residence. Confident, the protagonist decided to eliminate his enemies without fear. He then approached Karen, who informed him that she had made a sound suppressor for Zhang Yi's rifle. With the addition, the previously noisy rifle could now be used more quietly. Zhang Yi sat beside the girl, placed his hand on her shoulder, and asked about creating grenades and landmines. The girl was slightly confused, thinking Zhang Yi underestimated her abilities, though making such weapons was not difficult. She explained that crafting weapons like those had been done since medieval times, and she could do it with her eyes closed if the right materials were available. Zhang Yi explained that enemies with mutant abilities could attack their base. Although the girl was worried, Zhang Yi assured her that he could protect everyone. He expressed a special sentiment toward the girl, considering her like a sister who needed protection. Those words saddened the girl, realizing there was no chance for anything more. Zhang Yi stroked her face and promised to provide a safe life as long as she worked for him. The girl regained her enthusiasm and was ready to do anything for him without limits. Zhang Yi left her to work, with plans to ensure her absolute loyalty through her best efforts. He desperately needed weapons to face new threats. Zhang Yi contacted Chun and Pominyu to inform them about the threat from the major base. He warned them not to reveal their special abilities. Zhang Yi also emphasized that Chunlei was more dangerous due to its position between Zhang Yi's base and the mysterious military base, likely the first target. He asserted that if Chun was in danger, they should immediately respond because someone with Chun's extraordinary abilities could not be allowed to die. Meanwhile, Chun believed that the farming village and its people would not be attacked, as there was no reason for any organization to target them. At the western mountain base, 27 kilometers from Chun's village, a man and a girl prepared to investigate Zhang Yi's base. The girl speculated that the snowstorm would last a long time, possibly as God's final act to erase the world's sins. They continued their journey on a sled, avoiding the frozen river near Zhang Yi's base. Upon arriving at Chun's village, the two were impressed by the large ice castle there. They introduced themselves as government envoys, and the village leader welcomed them, instructing the villagers to treat them well despite some villagers' doubts. The leader convinced them that an alliance with the military was more crucial than their food supplies. He hosted a feast and explained the ice castle and the village's food production, crediting his leadership. One skeptical villager believed the leader was merely continuing the previous leader's efforts. When asked about food production, the village leader initially claimed they had maintained their crops despite the snowstorm. However, he later adjusted his statement, mentioning a decline in food production. The village leader discussed the ice structure he ordered, claiming it could benefit the government if they became allies. He ordered more food to further convince the woman, who began to suspect the village leader was hiding something that could be useful to the mountain base. When asked about when the snowstorm would end, the woman mentioned that the government had a significant plan to address the weather issue. The village leader and his followers were intrigued, but the woman also asked if they had noticed any changes among the villagers. The leader pretended to be unaware, considering whether to reveal Chun's identity as a mutant, though he requested the woman's phone number to report information if necessary. The village leader, fearing exposure, hesitated to disclose his knowledge of Zhang Yi, a resident across the river. The mention of Zhang Yi piqued the woman's interest, as he was the target of their investigation. The leader recounted how Zhang Yi had wiped out half of the village after they tried to steal food from him. All who had seen his face or knew his powers perished in the attack. However, the woman gained no further information about Zhang Yi's appearance or abilities. After their conversation, the two decided to leave the village and report back to their base. The woman planned to claim that they had discovered a village with ample food, beneficial for the future. Although the man questioned the lies they planned to tell, the woman remained unfazed, focused on securing special treatment and the necessary information. The pair arrived at Zhang Yi's residence, a large, well-stocked, and warmly heated house. They were convinced that Zhang Yi was an extraordinary figure, possibly involved in the supply thefts they had heard about. The man, with his leaping ability, carried the woman over the property's secure perimeter. The house was luxurious and well-guarded, but the woman managed to sneak inside undetected. As they explored the house, a sense of unease set in. The comfort and safety of the home were far beyond what they experienced at the mountain base. Feeling unsafe, the woman left a knife as a marker and suggested they return with reinforcements. She realized that Zhang Yi was far more prepared. His home was not just secure but luxurious, better even than the elite facilities of the mountain base. Zhang Yi surely possessed unknown powers and resources. Any confrontation could lead to fatal consequences. They quickly left, but in Zhang Yi's room, his cat awoke, sensing something amiss. Zhang Yi woke up, grabbed his weapon, and checked his phone. There were no security alerts. However, the cat's persistent nudging led him to open the door, where he found the knife left behind. Realizing the threat, Zhang Yi checked the surveillance footage and discovered that someone with special abilities had infiltrated his supposedly impenetrable home. Furious, he reviewed the footage and saw the two escaping on a snowmobile, heading toward their base to report crucial information. The woman speculated that Zhang Yi had stolen from the Walmart supply caches and possibly possessed the ability to hide or access items through dimensional means. If true, this would be one of the most potent abilities known. They anticipated a significant reward, but their excitement abruptly ended when a projectile pierced the woman's head. The surviving soldier panicked but quickly regained control, wary of the large, furry creature rolling toward them. The man shielded his companion, narrowly avoiding an attack. Chaos unfolded as the cat, an unusual and powerful creature, tore through the intruders. The soldier's last sight was a blur of fur and claws before collapsing in the snow. The intruders' gear revealed they were part of the Shizhen organization, whose underground base lay 27 kilometers away. Divided into 4 tiers, it housed military forces and individuals with special abilities. Zhang Yi's appreciation for Shizen's talents deepened. Later, Ear arrived with critical findings from the examination room. She explained that the woman's brain cells were distinct from typical humans, while the man possessed artificial muscle mutations in his legs. Knowing this, Zhang Yi grew curious about the power he had absorbed from them. Heading to the underground training facility, Zhang Yi tested his newfound abilities. His arrows now surpassed the speed of sound, thrilling him with the growth of his power. Meanwhile, at the military base, agents investigating Zhang Yi's territory made an urgent call for reinforcements. The military leader requested additional forces but was denied and instructed to seek authorization from the base commander. The secretary blocked the door, citing the commander's involvement in important matters. After a meeting with a group of admiring young women, the commander finally heard the soldiers' report. He agreed to dispatch lower-ranking troops, considering the situation insignificant. As the reinforcements prepared to leave, Teacher Lien noticed her students on the ground floor and inquired about their presence. 2 mischievous girls claimed to have special abilities and shared their encounters with the commander. Disappointed, Teacher Lien realized her students had become aware of their disgraceful situation. One of the girls confessed they had to return to the second-tier dormitory after serving the commander. Before they left, Teacher Lien asked about the other missing students. The girls revealed that many had been separated when Teacher Lien was absent and had never returned. One student tearfully admitted she believed her friends might already be dead, realizing their survival efforts might be in vain. This confession left Teacher Lien shocked and suspicious that there were darker secrets concealed within the base. Back on the 4th level, Teacher Lien met a student named SWA, who showed her the location of the missing students. Down there, she saw scientists carrying large bags, which the student claimed contained the failed experiment victims. The student spoke up because his friends had started disappearing, despite his father's orders to stay silent. Teacher Lien acted discreetly, incapacitating a scientist and disguising herself in his specialized attire. This disguise allowed her to enter a restricted area, where she witnessed human bodies used in energy experiments and discarded like trash. The bodies were ground into a white paste. The scientists casually discussed the flavor of the next meal on the 4th level, referring to the paste as a delicious and nutritious yogurt. They ate it without guilt, unaware of its true origin. Teacher Lien felt nauseated, realizing that the food she had been consuming was made from humans, specifically, the students. This revelation shattered her perception of the place, which she now saw as a hell of injustice, especially for the weak. She resolved to find a way to save her students and escape, but she was uncertain where to go, knowing that outside the base, they could die from the cold and starvation. Meanwhile, the reinforcements sent as backup arrived in front of Zhang Yi's house. One of the soldiers fell into a trap, his body brutally torn apart in the snow. The enraged captain was convinced the culprit was someone within the base. Explosions and gunfire alerted Zhang Yi that the attack had begun. He quickly activated a new protective force field created by Karen, satisfied with its effectiveness, realizing that new enemies had arrived. The soldiers searched for and deactivated the traps hidden in the snow, a tactic also used by Chun's village. Zhang Yi activated remote explosives, causing more soldiers to fall. The furious captain was informed that they were facing an unknown and formidable threat. With more casualties piling up from the traps, the soldiers suggested calling for additional reinforcements. However, the captain refused, choosing to press on despite the risks. Yang Mei was worried there might be a flaw in their defense system, but Zhang Yi trusted Karen and Shinsen's work, believing there were no security gaps. When asked why he hadn't attacked them, Zhang Yi simply replied that he wanted to test their abilities. The soldiers eventually realized that this shelter was built to protect Zhang Yi. The captain devised a plan to use explosives to breach the house. One soldier managed to infiltrate and plant the explosives while Zhang Yi watched calmly, then said, "It's time for them to learn how to face their enemy." The soldier fled the house before the explosives detonated. However, the explosion only created a small hole, melting the surrounding snow. Upon investigation, they found that the shelter's walls remained completely unscathed. They concluded that their only option was to dig a tunnel since the top of the shelter was indestructible. Ultimately, they gave up on capturing Zhang Yi alive, and an order was given to the snipers to eliminate the target. Zhang Yi, observing from the window, remained unfazed as bullets missed, and his reinforced windows remained intact. Disappointed with the abilities of the mutant soldiers from the West Mountain military base, Zhang Yi's reaction was noticed by the troops. Realizing the mission was impossible, the captain ordered a retreat. Seeing them withdraw, Zhang Yi began shooting at them. The soldiers fired back, thinking he had exposed himself, but this was all part of his strategy. Zhang Yi absorbed the incoming bullets into his alternate dimension and reflected them back at the soldiers, swiftly eliminating many of them. The captain ultimately called off the attack, commanding all troops to retreat, and referred to Zhang Yi as a mutant demon with powers too mysterious to comprehend. As they fled, one soldier was shot in the leg and could no longer run. His comrades hid behind a pile of snow and deployed a smoke grenade to block Zhang Yi's vision. However, Zhang Yi, who had previously absorbed snow from an avalanche, hurled it toward them, wiping out nearly the entire squad. A few hours later, the leader of the underground base received a report about the nearly annihilated squad. Previously underestimating Zhang Yi, the leader now realized the gravity of the situation. His secretary revealed that Zhang Yi's shelter had been built 10 years ago, making it incredibly well protected. The leader concluded that Zhang Yi, who was once just a warehouse supervisor, was now living in a base more resource-rich and luxurious than their own military outpost. He became convinced that all of Walmart's resources were in Zhang Yi's hands, granting him unlimited access to food. Zhang Yi's ability to store vast amounts of supplies made him a prime target. Determined to seize these resources, the leader decided to mobilize the full military force to take them by any means necessary. Some time later, the troops arrived at Chun village. Chun quickly contacted Zhang Yi, confirming his suspicion that the soldiers had come to attack the shelter across the frozen lake. Zhang Yi warned Chun to be cautious, as they would likely seize the village's food supplies to strengthen their forces. He advised Chun to escape to his residence if he ever felt threatened. Zhang Yi also warned that if the military discovered Chun's abilities, they would try to recruit him with promises of luxury, but that would turn them into enemies. Chun, feeling ashamed at the thought, reaffirmed his loyalty to Zhang Yi. In the village chief welcomed the troops and suggested Chun hide. However, Chun decided to meet the leader and insisted that hiding his identity was a mistake. The village chief introduced Chun as a mutant. The captain of the unit asked about his abilities, and Chun demonstrated his power to control snow. The captain then offered him a bright future within their organization. Meanwhile, Zhang Yi received a call from Chun, who reported on the strength of the troops. Zhang Yi thanked him for his loyalty and asked if he wanted to join the military. After hearing Chun's response, Zhang Yi was confident that Chun remained on his side and that the information he provided could be trusted. Chun, following his instincts, entrusted everything to Zhang Yi. Upon learning the enemy's plans, Zhang Yi held a meeting with the women in his home, informing them of the impending attack. He suggested they take shelter underground, the safest part of their base. Although the enemy was stronger, Zhang Yi was certain they wouldn't be able to breach their defenses. Zhang Yi then checked the security system with Shinsen, who confirmed that all enemy hacking attempts had been thwarted. Feeling grateful to have Shinsen by his side, Zhang Yi proceeded to visit Karen at her workplace to discuss potential attacks. Karen explained that explosives, particularly C4, were the most obvious method to destroy the base. However, without sufficient supplies, such an attack would be difficult to execute. Karen also reported that explosives and modified bulletproof vests resembling the uniforms of high-ranking enemy officers had been prepared as per Zhang Yi's request. Curious about the equipment Zhang Yi had ordered, Karen asked for clarification, but Zhang Yi assured her that everything would make sense in due time. At the village base, Chun met with the mutant soldiers who would assist in attacking Zhang Yi's fortress. Soon after, the main force arrived, including new mutants and Professor Lien, who recognized Chun as the savior of Shinsen and the thief who had stolen his sword. Although Lien disagreed with the group's mission, he chose to remain silent. The soldiers inquired about Chun's abilities, and he revealed his power to control ice and construct ice houses. The captain then prepared for a large-scale assault on Zhang Yi's base. As they advanced, the captain noticed grenades scattered around Zhang Yi's residence. Zhang Yi, clad in combat gear, instructed the women to head underground. He then looked out the window, closely monitoring the approaching enemy forces. The soldiers crept toward the house, planting explosives as the captain ordered a massive detonation to remove any traps. They stacked bombs in an attempt to bring down the front wall of Zhang Yi's house. Observing from a distance, Zhang Yi had already anticipated their plan. As the explosives were about to be activated, the captain felt a tinge of disappointment. Zhang Yi hadn't resisted, making the assault seem too easy. However, when the detonator was triggered, the explosion resulted in minimal damage. The soldiers were confused, only a small section of the area where the bombs were placed showed any signs of destruction. Inside the house, Zhang Yi reassured the women that everything was fine. He had absorbed the explosive force into his storage dimension, rendering the enemy's attack useless. This realization stunned the soldiers. Chun then informed the troops to return to their base and prepare for the next attack. Meanwhile, Zhang Yi reminded Chun to stay vigilant. In the village, a soldier reported that they needed food supplies for 65 people. Chun realized that their food stocks would soon be depleted. The village leader approved the request but asked how long it would take to destroy Zhang Yi's base. The soldier responded that it was classified information. Later, the village leader asked Chun to build ice houses for the soldiers. The next day, new explosives arrived, along with a mutant resembling Shingeki Kaijin. The captain hurled explosives at Zhang Yi's fortress, but Zhang Yi countered by using his ability to redirect the blast. He threw the box of explosives back, forcing the soldiers to take cover. The massive explosion reduced dozens of soldiers to ashes, leaving Zhang Yi satisfied. The captain was shocked, questioning what kind of power could create such destruction. While lost in thought, a bullet nearly struck his head, but he managed to dodge it twice. Though Zhang Yi's shot had missed, another soldier was hit in the forehead. However, his mutant abilities prevented the bullet from penetrating his skull. Zhang Yi continued observing the enemy's movements. 2 more bullets were fired at him, but he absorbed them with his storage ability, remarking that this was too easy. He then reflected the bullets back at their shooters, instantly killing them both. A powerful tremor nearly caused Zhang Yi to fall from the window. The enraged captain launched an all-out assault on the structure, but the fortress walls remained unscathed. Frustrated, he delayed the battle and vowed to destroy Zhang Yi, even if it meant sacrificing his own life. Zhang Yi acknowledged the enemy's strength but saw them as a threat only if they managed to infiltrate the fortress. The soldiers who had failed their mission returned to the village, only to be met with complaints from the villagers. Frustrated, the captain ordered them to remain silent and demanded food to restore their strength. The villagers, however, began to question their support for the military. One soldier grew angry at the villagers' defiance, but the captain reassured him that they would remain useful until Zhang Yi was defeated, after which they would be used as energy sources at the Ear mountain base. Meanwhile, Yang Mi brought food to Zhang Yi. As Zhang Yi ate, he asked Ken about the structural repairs. Ken explained that they could be carried out later. They then raised their glasses in celebration of their victory. During dinner, Shinsen informed Zhang Yi that Professor Lien had contacted her. She handed him the phone, and Professor Lien expressed her intention to negotiate. Zhang Yi asked Shinsen if she trusted the professor, and Shinsen assured him that Lian always kept her promises. Professor Lian revealed that she had infiltrated the military base at Western Mountain and could assist Zhang Yi, on the condition that her student's safety was guaranteed. Zhang Yi agreed to contact her when necessary. After the conversation ended, Zhang Yi informed the women about the situation at the enemy base. Karen felt saddened upon hearing about the fate of her colleagues. Zhang Yi then asked Shinsen about the Trojan horse plan. Shinsen explained that Professor Lian could plant a flash drive inside the enemy's systems, granting them access to the base's network. Zhang Yi then contacted Professor Lian to request the mission, and she agreed, placing her trust in him after he had saved her students. Meanwhile, the captain reassured the villagers that the military was staying in their village to protect them from the demons across the lake. He urged them to unite in the fight against these so-called demons. During a meeting, the captain warned that a rebellion among the villagers was imminent and that some of them might die in the uprising. Professor Lian, furious at the idea of sacrificing innocent people, objected. Feng proposed an alternative to avoid unnecessary casualties, and Lian agreed, siding with them for the sake of her students' safety. However, she insisted that they minimize civilian deaths. Shortly after, Feng instructed the villagers to dig tunnels and join the fight against Zhang Yi. However, most of them refused, not wanting to create more problems. The village leader tried to convince them that Zhang Yi's death would bring peace, but many resisted, pointing out that Zhang Yi had never attacked them since the peace agreement. Lian grew increasingly worried about the situation. She contacted Zhang Yi to inform him of the villagers' actions and asked for his next move. Zhang Yi calmly responded that he would allow them to dig, as the situation was under control. Lian then asked for Zhang Yi's home address, hoping he would come to pick her up later, but Zhang Yi simply replied that everything would happen in due time. The next day, the attack on Zhang Yi's bunker began from multiple directions. Despite this, Zhang Yi watched without concern. Yang Mi, puzzled by his calm demeanor, questioned him. Shinsen explained that they had equipment capable of detecting underground movements, so allowing the enemy to dig was all part of their strategy. As time passed, many enemy soldiers began to perish due to the cold and exhaustion. Those who attempted to rebel were dealt with harshly, as the captain would not tolerate disobedience. A few days later, Lian contacted Zhang Yi again, reporting the rising death toll. Zhang Yi assured her that he would soon put his plan into action but first asked why the number of mutant attacks had decreased. Lian explained that only the leaders were fighting while the rest were guarding the village to prevent rebellion. Zhang Yi understood the situation and prepared for his next move. He exited through a secret tunnel, driving a snow vehicle toward Chun village while wearing a military uniform. A soldier who spotted him immediately saluted, but before he could react further, his life was swiftly taken. The scent of blood spread through the air, alerting the other soldiers, who quickly pursued him. However, their attacks were meaningless against Zhang Yi's dimensional abilities. He retaliated with his sword, cutting down soldiers one by one until the ground was littered with bodies. A distress signal was sent to the captain and the remaining mutants, prompting them to return to the village at full speed. By the time they arrived, they found the bodies of their fallen comrades scattered across the village. The captain, enraged, concluded that a traitor must have leaked their plans to Zhang Yi and vowed to uncover the culprit. Meanwhile, Zhang Yi took Chun back to his residence using the snow vehicle. Once inside, he brought Chun to his room, which was fully equipped with a body pillow. Afterward, Zhang Yi headed to the control room, where Lian and Shinsen were waiting. Shinsen explained how she had used Lian's information to access the enemy's base system and sever communications between the Zishan headquarters and Captain Feng. This news delighted Zhang Yi, who then assured Lian that he would rescue her students once the enemy threat was eliminated. However, their conversation was cut short when enemy troops arrived at the bunker's emergency exit. Zhang Yi had been waiting for the right moment to strike. He stepped out to face the enemy, who immediately recognized his presence. Standing alone, Zhang Yi appeared to be an easy target. One enraged soldier, ignoring his comrade's warnings, charged at him recklessly. However, as he approached, Zhang Yi pressed a hidden switch on the ground. A massive explosion erupted, triggering an avalanche that instantly buried the soldier beneath the snow. Lian rescued Chun along with the mutant cat. Feng was furious at her betrayal, but Lian declared that she was never truly one of them. A fierce battle erupted between Lian and the captain of the mutant forces. One of the mutant soldiers tried to defend himself by creating a barrier, but the mutant cat's powerful attack shattered it, instantly killing him. Feng briefly lost focus after witnessing his comrade's death but quickly regained his composure as Lian's attack drew near. Meanwhile, Zhang Yi's relentless assault mercilessly wiped out the remaining mutants. The enemy forces found themselves trapped, Zhang Yi in front and Chun Lei appearing behind them. Chun used her abilities to trigger a massive avalanche, burying them all beneath the snow. Amid the chaos, Lien seized the opportunity to escape with the mutant cat, taking Chun-Lei with her. The captain could do nothing but watch, powerless to stop them. The remaining enemy troops were now completely cornered as Zhang Yi stood above them. "You will taste your own weapons," Zhang Yi declared before launching explosives toward them. A massive explosion erupted, instantly killing most of the enemy soldiers. The captain and a few of his remaining troops managed to survive, only to face an even greater threat, a gigantic snow avalanche crashing down, burying them alive. Zhang Yi contacted Shinsen to confirm that his calculations were correct and assured her they would return home soon. Professor Lien suggested checking on the enemy captain, but Zhang Yi was certain he would freeze to death beneath the snow. After returning home, they celebrated their victory. Zhang Yi relaxed with his wives, enjoying a drink in the midst of the peaceful atmosphere. Turning to Yokier, Zhang Yi remarked, "You are one of the lucky few who have managed to survive in this dangerous world." Music. From the entire assault on Zhang Yi, only Captain Feng survived and returned to the base. There, he faced the wrath of his leader for losing nearly half of their elite troops. The loss of 50 top warriors significantly weakened their future defenses. Feng, burdened with guilt over the deaths of his comrades, whom he considered his brothers, fell to his knees, begging for forgiveness and willingly accepting execution as punishment. However, he also pleaded for one last chance to take revenge on Zhang Yi. The leader initially considered executing him but realized that losing their strongest mutant was too great a risk. Instead, he ordered Feng to be imprisoned for a week to reflect on his failures. The leader then made a critical decision, to halt direct attacks on Zhang Yi and focus on rebuilding their forces. He feared that other bases might take advantage of their weakened state and attack them. He then inquired about the status of the newly captured villagers. His secretary reported that they were in good condition and had the potential to develop special abilities. Without hesitation, the leader decided to begin experiments, injecting Feng's mutated cells into the villagers. Although many would likely die in the process, he was indifferent, prioritizing the replacement of lost soldiers. He aimed to conquer Tianhai City, but without a strong army, his plans would be impossible. For now, he postponed the missile project and instead considered negotiating with Zhang Yi to persuade him to join the Zishan base. Chen, the leader, ordered his subordinates to prepare the communication setup. Once the laptop and headphones were ready, Chen resolved to use the missiles as a last resort if Zhang Yi refused his offer. As the call began, Zhang Yi greeted Chen casually, even complimenting his leadership at the Zishan base. However, Zhang Yi's tone made Chen feel mocked, fueling his anger. Chen declared that his actions were not for Zhang Yi's benefit. Calmly, Zhang Yi teased him, pointing out his weaknesses, especially after more than 50 of his men failed to defeat him in just a few days. He then questioned how Chen planned to kill him after suffering such repeated failures. Chen, now furious, threatened to launch missiles to destroy Zhang Yi's entire hideout. Zhang Yi was initially surprised but quickly deduced that Chen was bluffing, as there were no missile bases in Tianhai. However, Chen insisted that he had contacts in a neighboring city that possessed a military base with missile capabilities. This base had previously been responsible for bombing missions against their enemies. Zhang Yi started to believe him but remained skeptical. To test Chen's threat, Zhang Yi dared him to fire a missile near his location. Chen scoffed, calling Zhang Yi a fool. "Missiles are too valuable to be wasted so easily," he retorted. From Chen's tone, Zhang Yi began to realize that the threat was real. Despite his doubts, Zhang Yi requested a few days to consider the offer. However, Chen gave him only one day to decide. After the call ended, Chen hoped Zhang Yi would surrender to avoid wasting valuable resources. Meanwhile, Zhang Yi began contemplating abandoning his current hideout. Shinsen doubted whether the leader of the Shinsan base truly had access to missiles, given that they had previously sent soldiers without missile support. Zhang Yi, however, confirmed that the military base in the neighboring city did possess such weapons. If attacked, everything would be destroyed. Yokier asked if they could return to their original home, and Zhang Yi nodded. "The safety of my harem is my top priority," he affirmed. Chun-Lei looked disappointed, having just arrived in this warm and comfortable place. Professor Lien then reminded Zhang Yi of the promise he made to her. He could not forget it. Zhang Yi gazed at his computer, deep in thought, before handing a small chip to Lien. "The success of rescuing your students depends on your ability to install this chip in the central computer," he told her. Sometime later, Lien successfully infiltrated the Sinuan base without being detected. On her way inside, she overheard a conversation between two scientists. They were shocked to learn that Lien had left her students behind. Because of this, their leader, Chen, had decided to conduct mutant experiments on both the students and the captured villagers. After the scientists left, Lien contacted Zhang Yi, requesting help to rescue her students. Zhang Yi reminded Lien to implant the chip into the central computer to ensure the students' escape and promised protection and food if she succeeded. Lien knew this was the only way, despite the computer room being heavily guarded. Meanwhile, Zhang Yi and his women headed to Building 25, informing Shinsen that if Lien succeeded, they would attack the military base in the mountains. Shinsen emphasized the importance of gathering intelligence from the base, as understanding more about these unexpected powers would give them an advantage. Their conversation was interrupted when Karen expressed concern that Lien might get caught and tortured. Zhang Yi smiled inwardly, not believing in good fortune for good people, yet he reassured Karen with comforting words. After some time, they arrived at Yuan Luo, where Uncle Yu was waiting with his new wife, who was willing to assist them. Chun looked saddened at the thought of leaving her plastic wife behind. Zhang Yi, aware of the surrounding area, was certain that all the neighbors had perished. However, his uncle's cheerful voice upon hearing good news disturbed his thoughts. Together, they made their way to the safe house. Returning to their original home stirred old memories. Juimi encouraged everyone to make themselves comfortable despite the limited space. Meanwhile, others eagerly played board games with friends. Zhang Yi spoke with his uncle about the current situation, asking if there were any survivors or if anyone had tried to steal resources. His uncle explained that the first arrivals had begged for food but became aggressive when refused. Some survivors still lived in Building 18. Zhang Yi was surprised and inquired further, but his uncle only knew that they were occasionally seen roaming the streets. Intrigued, Zhang Yi decided to visit them but also mentioned the rocket threat from the leader of the Shan Mountain base. He longed for a simple life, yet achieving it seemed impossible. Zhang Yi expressed his doubts about the existence of Shan's rockets. His uncle explained that Hover possessed many valuable resources, attracting countless people. Even his uncle had been attacked despite having fewer resources. Zhang Yi decided to stay away from the main base for a while, waiting until he was strong enough to face his new enemies. Uncle Yu informed Zhang Yi about a strange group that had recently emerged, calling themselves the Servants of Snow. Initially dismissing them as religious fanatics, he later realized they offered training to enhance people's abilities. Uncle Yu ultimately refused their offer, and the group then attempted to influence others in the neighborhood. Zhang Yi, noticing suspicious activity in the building his uncle mentioned, felt the need to investigate personally. When Uncle Yu offered assistance, Zhang Yi declined, confident that these people were far weaker than him. Before leaving, Zhang Yi told the women that he was going to visit an old friend and assured them not to worry. Entering Building 18 without hesitation, he fired a shot into the air to grab Lin Jian's attention. Seeing Zhang Yi, Lin Jian was instantly filled with fear and rushed to his wife and child. Confused, his child asked why they had to fight Zhang Yi, while his wife suggested they resist. However, Lin Jian remained calm, explaining that even if the entire neighborhood united, they would still be no match for Zhang Yi. He urged his wife to hide. Soon after, Lin Jian descended to meet Zhang Yi. As Zhang Yi approached, he was surprised to see the building's residents still alive. Lin Jian explained that they had survived thanks to the seeds Zhang Yi had left behind. Zhang Yi found it hard to believe that the seeds had grown so quickly. He then activated his ability to sense other mutants. Lin Jian apologized and offered himself to be killed if Zhang Yi wished to punish them. However, when the residents saw their leader in danger, they shouted and swore to protect him. Thank you for following this storyline. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this content so you won't miss updates on other exciting comic storylines. Since I produce these videos on my own, it takes time to prepare new content, so please be patient. If there's a comic you'd like me to cover, feel free to leave a comment below. See you in the next video?